What's up, guys? David DeSell here, your host of the Business with the Boys podcast. And Landon and I had an opportunity to chat with Doug C. Brown. He is the CEO of CEO Sales Strategies and a renowned sales revenue and profit growth expert. Over his career, Doug has founded or built more than 35 businesses. That's not a typo, 35 businesses. And collectively, he's generated over $960 million in sales for himself and his clients. As the creator of a predictable, reliable, measurable, math-based model for sales revenue growth, he's helped businesses achieve remarkable outcomes, including raising close rates by 143% and boosting product sales by over 4,150%. In Doug's latest venture, Vibitno, it is a revolutionary sales automation software designed to increase sales revenue by enhancing follow-up efficiency, boosting client retention, and increasing, sales productivity. So without further ado, let's dive into the episode and learn from Doug.
Who knew I would make it this far? They hated, they never believe me. Yeah, I would never drop the ball. I know I make it look easy. Yeah, Mayweather with the defense. I don't care what a critic got to say.
Doug, I've really been looking forward to this, man. Appreciate you joining the show.
Hey, David, thanks for having me on here. I'm very grateful.
Well, let's dive right in. So I first want to start just so we can add some context to the listeners before we go through your backstory. Help set the stage of what you do now and the types of folks that you serve at the moment.
So I have a few different businesses, but the CEO Sales Strategies business, what we do is we help companies, generally companies who have sales teams who are doing outbound prospecting and having conversations. We help them predictably grow their revenue and their profits. And we do a math-based, metrics-based model. So we dial it in mathematically. And, if they want a 23% lift, we can figure that out. If they want to double, we can figure that out, those type of things. Then I have a SaaS company, which is called Vibitno, which is a automated, personalized, meaningful follow-up process. So it's too many people dropping the ball in follow-up. They got too many things going on. So the system actually takes care of it, makes it personalized and meaningful to people. And then the third business we have is actually an insurance business that I have with partnership. And so we generally do life and health and that type of insurance where we built an agency out of it. And we help people make a minimum six-figure income, as an agent in the insurance business.
Well, based on Landon, I don't know if you picked up on this when Doug was saying he helps sales teams with a math-based and predictable approach. But as soon as he said that, I was like, oh, that sounds like good old Al Granum from back in the day at Northwestern with the one card
10-3-1,
system. So, and it's as much as we joke, that system is eerily spot on. Yeah, especially early on in your career, and it helps it having a math-based structure to that side of the business is incredibly helpful to be able to, coach the sales team up to hit certain metrics that you pretty much know for certain will result in whatever they want to achieve if they just do the things that they need to do as leading indicators. It's not rocket science. It's just science, right? It's math.
Human beings, and I agree 100% with what you're saying. Human beings, by nature, we can't really hold ourselves accountable because we don't really look at the metrics of accountability, really, when it comes down to it. So it's like when people go to the gym, they're working out all the time and they start to maybe look better or feel better, but they really haven't measured what the percentage of that growth is. They can just say, well, geez, I'm lifting more, or I'm not as winded as I used to be. So the same, thing in the gym, though, most people, the gyms are open January, February, they're full. By March, they're pretty emptied out again, right? So
I think you're being generous. By February, they're starting
I
to
was thinking the
empty
same
out.
thing. Yeah. It's last week of January.
and well, and that's analogous to most people and growing companies are certainly with sales teams. So if we but if we apply that metrics-based model that you're talking about, and we're holding the accountability to that process, upgrading the skills, upgrading the mindset, building the confidence, magical things happen because it's all a compounding effect that happens within the business.
hmm Well, you have a lot going on at the moment between the SaaS, the consulting company with CEO sales strategies and training company, as well as the insurance outfit. How'd you get to this point? Bring us as far back as we can go from maybe wrapping up school to getting into the workplace. Have you always been entrepreneurial, or did you have a job or two or 10 in the meantime? Walk us through
Yeah,
your journey.
yeah, absolutely. So to answer your question with two words, pure insanity is what drove me here. But so um, actually, I started working at the age of 3 for my dad in his business, and
Sounds like he was looking for a nice tax write-off and maybe
Or slave labor.
slave labor, either one. I never got a chance to ask him that question because I always wanted to as I got older, but all my brothers, it was a family-run company with employees. We had like 14 people. It was an industrial machinery repair company or sales company. And at 3, I was just sweeping floors. And I think know my dad now. He probably did it to sort of open our eyes up because he didn't really care for corporate America. He was a high-level manager for Raytheon Corporation and left to start the business. And I think he wanted to give us exposure to free thought, leverage, all that. But I loved it because at 3 years old, man, I got to go to the bar with the adults and they propped me up for lunchtime on the bar stool. I had my Coca-Cola and they had their beer or whatever. I hear my mother was not pleased with that. I know.
I wonder why.
I can imagine.
So, but by around 5.5, 6, they started bringing us out for client interactions, helping, write orders, things like that. And somewhere probably between 6 and 7, I remember this happened. I wrote an order and I sold a part for $20, but we had paid $10 for it. And then I realized I was getting 25 cents an hour. So in my brain, it went, wait a minute, I'm working all week for $10. And I just did this in like 6 minutes, 8 minutes. And I think that's where it started taking root. And so then I just, sort of started like little side businesses. I was too young to get a paper route. So I went to my brothers who are 5 and 8 years older than I am. And I said, would you take a paper route? And I'll get all the kids in the neighborhood to deliver the papers and I'll pay you an override, that type of thing. So I just tried a lot of things like that through life. And, I think we're on our 38th business at this point through the process. Some didn't do well. They crashed, burned. I learned a lot of lessons. I put myself on a sofa one time with $400 in my pocket from, having a multi-6-figure bank account. And we've had some break evens and we've had some great wins. And, I can't see myself doing anything but this because I'm driven to help people solve problems, gain goals, get opportunities that they were looking for. And so to me, that's just a natural extension of business. And, if I can help somebody better their life, then that's what I would like to do. And, along the ride, I've had some really good experiences. I got to be the president of sales and training for Chet Holmes, Tony Robbins, Russ Whitney, who owned, a couple $1 billion worth of brands. I've helped coach large companies, CEOs, presidents of CBS, Intuit, Procter & Gamble, all those type of things. So got a great, well-rounded education out of that whole process. And, been able to work in, I think it's over 350 industries throughout my life. So I've seen a lot. Sometimes I need to remind myself of how I would advise somebody and not make the same mistakes that I see them. But that's part of being an entrepreneur. You lose, you win. And, I agree with Mark Cuban. You only have to get it right one time though, and then you can set yourself up forever.
A lot of truth
Well,
to that statement.
yeah, and as much as I appreciate all that context, your first comment encapsulates that perfectly. Pure insanity.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. People, when I was younger, especially maybe between the age, I got my first bank loan at 13. And I persuaded my,
Lending limits were a little looser back then,
yeah,
apparently.
well, no, see, I persuaded my brother Steven actually to co-sign the loan for me. He was 19. And I was able to pay the loan back in a year. So it all went well. But they did give me a credit line before I was 18 years old at that same bank. So I think the lending practices were a little looser there. Um, but people thought I was a little crazy, like as a kid, because I was constantly looking at stuff and like, how do I monetize this? How do I do this? How do I get myself involved in this? And I had to learn the hard way that focus is a requirement in all businesses. And so, when I'm trying to run like 5 or 6 businesses at one time, when it wasn't really, I can do that now because I know how to delegate. But back then I was just, everything was me. But yeah, people thought I was a little insane. And quite frankly, I questioned whether I was or was not, because, all my friends were, going out doing things with their friends or whatever. I was, working. you know.
What
So,
was what was what was it like going from, if I caught it correctly, 6 figures saved up down to $400 and on a sofa? Like, how old were you? How'd you put yourself in that situation, or what caused that? And, lastly, how did you not just stay on that sofa? What'd you do to snap back?
well, I was 22 when that happened. And it was a very bad business decision going in a direction that my inner gut told me don't do. But I did it anyways because I got greedy, really, when it came down to
Hmm.
it, right? So, because if it had worked, I would have had at least a 7-figure, maybe multi 7-figure bank account, right? So, but when I look back on it, there were indications of not to do it. But again, I got greedy. I reached, and it hurt. Um, it was a little, frankly, it was demoralizing to a certain degree because you go from having more money than I mean, who even today at 22, you have a few $100,000. It's like
And
not a
you were
bad
you were the
deal.
one laughing at that time with your buddies who
Yeah, yeah,
were
yeah, yeah.
going out, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I would do crazy, fun, crazy things. Like my buddy lived in California, and I'd go, to I was in, part-time college. So on Friday, I'd get out, I'd fly to California. We'd spend all weekend going out having a good time, and I'd fly back on the red eye on Sunday and go to class, right? So I was having a heck of a good time. And in between, with the businesses, that they were going well. So but I made a bad decision. And how did I get out of it? Well, I got to tell you, for the first like couple of weeks, it was more of a "oh, poor me" type of mentality, right? I had to go through the process of grieving, I guess.
Hmm.
um, but the thing is the sofa I ended up on was my mother's sofa, my mom and dad. So I had to move back into the house after being out on my own. It was a little humbling. I would, at the time, but here's part of the reason I got out. So I was on the sofa, and then eventually, my grandfather, who lived at that house with them, he passed away. So I got on the sofa for like, I think it was 2.5, 3, almost 4 months, and then I got to move into the bedroom that my grandfather was in. And every day from like the 4th to the 5th month, every single day, my mother would wake up early. I think she did this on purpose, but I don't know. I haven't asked her. And she'd come in the bedroom early in the morning, and I hear her feet, foot, come across the room. She'd get right by the bed, and she'd look down at me, and she'd say, "By the time you give me grandchildren, I'll be too damn old to be able to recognize them." And she would turn around, I'd hear her feet, and then she would slam the door. I don't know if she was trying to jar me open on this. I was already working on getting out of this thing. But at that point, I made that decision that I'm going to turn this around. And I think, a combination of when we're sick and tired of being sick and tired, because I tried some things in between, but that didn't really work out. But then I said to myself, look, you know what? It doesn't matter what age I'm at. I'm going to make this work. And I started going back to work. And that next business actually went over 7 figures in 15 months. And so I took myself out of that. But it was, and the thing I've learned from all of that is that our mind is an amazing thing, right? We have a limbic system that wires us for survival. And we have the prefrontal cortex, which, is our creative side, right? It has more of the Zen side. And if you live too long in the limbic system, then what ends up happening is it actually sabotages your ability to go into the other system in the prefrontal cortex. And when we do that, we actually start sabotaging our own success because we're thinking scarcity. We're thinking, oh no, what if I lose the money again? In my case, right? What if I go do this and it doesn't work out? And we get so certain about that we actually shut down the ability for us to, go to the other side of creativity where everything is born. And I think my mother coming in every morning created enough pain for me to go, okay, I'm out of this. And that, allowed me to ask different questions like, okay, you've done this before. How do you, where'd you make your mistakes? But what if you tried this? What if we did this? Questions of opportunity versus questions of, oh, I don't have any money. Where am I going to get the money? Right. So, and it's like, well, duh, you were 13 years old. You went out and got a bank loan, duh. Right. And so then I started thinking more like that. And I was able to open up some finance and that opened up a couple opportunities. And that's how we did it.
It's so interesting. A lot of folks, myself included at times, when you go down the path of having a conversation around mindset, my reaction used to be, and a lot of folks' reactions still are like, well, that's the fluffy stuff. It's just I need to know the tactical things of what I need to do to be successful. And similar to what you just articulated, I finally learned that stuff is not only foundational, but it's critical to get in check. And in a similar scenario, albeit in a bed to start, not a couch, when I left being an advisor, I was also going through a divorce at the time. We were only married for like 6 months, and I went from wearing a suit and tie every day to work. I was the financial advisor that, cut his grass last, so to speak. So I spent everything that I made and then some. Yep. And I moved back in with my dad at 27 years old, and zero revenue because I had left being an advisor and I was in the midst of starting a consulting company, and about $45,000 in credit card debt. And there was a short period of time, like a week or two, where it was the woe is me, the grieving process, failure, all that type of stuff. And then similar to you, there was a shift in mindset of making a decision of this is either going to define me for the worst or it's going to define me for the best. And to your point, Doug, when you start thinking more opportunistically, using some similar lingo that you shared, you activate your reticular activating system, your brain's filter for relevant information. You start seeing the pieces of the puzzle all around you to help you get to where you are, or where you want to go, as opposed to seeing all the reasons why you can't be successful because you're in that scarcity mindset. So for folks listening, I would ask you to get humbled like I had to get, and realize that your mindset is of the utmost importance to be successful. And it's not just the fluffy stuff. It's critical. And Landon, I'm sure you've experienced, things like that as well on your end.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it always goes back to the old adage of, the highs aren't it's never as good as it seems. It's never as bad as it seems, right? So you just kind of always keep that perspective. You can have a big win tomorrow. You can get kicked in the teeth, and it's always a good reminder. But you know, Doug, it's easy to get to where you were at, right? Like you said, you had a few wins, and if you get on a winning streak, it's like, well, I'm just good enough that even though my gut's telling me I probably shouldn't do this, I'm good enough. Everything else has worked out. Why wouldn't
Right.
this, right? And I think that can get people in problems sometimes.
Well, to both of your points, right? Henry Ford, what you think is either right or right? So type of
Hmm.
thing, Um, it's not the exact quote, but that's the
The meaning of it.
the essence, yes. And I remember hearing Tony Robbins one day, because I was fortunate enough to be around him and others. Um, but I remember Tony saying one day, some gentleman was saying to him the exact thing that David, you were saying, right? It was like, well, I don't want to learn. Why do I have to learn this stuff? I just want to learn the tactics and all this other stuff in my business. Why do I have to learn about myself? And Tony looked at me and he goes, because you are your business. And it was like, wow, okay. So that was a profound statement to me at that time in my life. And, um, it's, there's a song, an old song that's called That's Life, right? Frank Sinatra sang it, right? And it's like, you're riding high in April and down in May, right? And that's just sometimes how it happens. And in business, there's seasons. There's seasons to every business, like, and sometimes winter is cold and long. And we've got to be able to take ourselves out. But if we don't allow our mind to move in the direction that we want to swim, then we have a current coming against us or with us. And that's the whole thing. Like if we're swimming and you're swimming, let's say in a river, the current is pulling you one way or another. Anybody who's ever swam in the ocean or the river, you're getting pulled by these currents one way or another. And it's either giving you, going with you or it's going against you. And if your mind is in that place where you're just constantly self-sabotaging, asking questions that are going to give you an answer like, why am I failing? Your mind's going to come back and go because you're focused on failure. You're dumb, that type of thing. And so that just starts to reinforce that. If we allow that to take root, that's the crazy part, because now we start believing it. And if we keep doing it, we build it into a habit where we actually put a label on ourselves. And when we're doing that, that's kind of the kiss of death until we pull that label off and we put a different label on, from, fraidy cat to courage, right? Those type of things. So it is a big part of business success. And I've just seen it across, I've worked with major corporations and CEOs who run, multi-billion-dollar companies. I've seen it happen there, and I see it happening in the solo entrepreneur, and anywhere in between. So I don't know what it is about us human beings that we were wired that way, but it's a constant daily. I don't want to say struggle, because it's not a struggle, but it's just like we brush our teeth. Why don't we brush our mind?
Hmm.
Every day. And if we do that, we'll have a much easier time at it.
What was the business that you started after you moved from the couch to the bedroom that got up to seven figures over 15 months?
Telecommunications business. It was yeah, it
Sweet.
was yeah, it was and it's crazy because I went back and I was like, how did I build this other business? And I'm like, paper route. I recruited other people to go out and find us customers and then build their delivery routes and right and that thing. So when I built the paper route, it wasn't like, hey, we just got these papers. It's like, hey, find some other clients in the neighborhood, knock on a few doors, right? And da 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 da. And I was like, well, why don't I just build an agency out of this thing? And I did. And that's, I got the power of leverage out of the process. So, um, Tony always said success leaves clues. I didn't know Tony at that time, but he's right. If you look back, and it doesn't have to be our own success, it could be someone else's success. And, I've kind of embraced that through any new thing that I'm going through today, or I want to enter into this business or enter into that business. I now research it and say, okay, who's done it the way that I think it should be done it successfully, Do they do it ethically? And if so, how do I get a hold of that person and pick their brain? Actually next Wednesday, sorry, next Monday, I'm going for lunch for somebody. And then I was fortunate enough, like in the consulting business, I think it's on the 12th of August, I'd have to check, but I was able to get a lunch appointment with a guy named Thomas Doyley Jr. And the reason I'm telling people is I'm not that special. You just have to ask. And Thomas Doyley Jr. started a little company that now is called Deloitte. And
just a little company.
You have not because you ask not, right, David?
No, that's well said, Landon. That's exactly the case, right? And so, the best salespeople in the world are children because they ask questions.
We talked about that yesterday.
Yeah, so yesterday on a podcast that we recorded with this guy Chris, he started a car wash back when he was 8 years old, and he went door to door and was basically asking folks if he could wash their car for $5. And we had talked about how with door knocking or sales in general, let's start there. Sales in general, typically you refine your skill set and your closing ratio gets better over time.
Right.
Whereas door knocking, starting at 8 years old, your closing ratio probably gets worse over time because you get less and less cute.
Yeah.
It's easier to slam the door in your face at 28 than it is at 8.
It is. I suppose, though, if you're a lady and you start to get prettier and prettier and prettier, you probably, it does increase, just because of that.
That's a little different. Yeah.
Not because I'm sexist, just because of how human beings generally work. Right. But you're right. At 8 years old.
It depends on if the husband or the wife answers the door at that point.
Very good point. Very good point. Yeah. Oh, get out of here. My husband doesn't want to talk to you. But at 8 years old, it's hard to say no to an 8-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, especially for $5.
Yeah. Especially a little entrepreneur. Like that's worth it all day long.
Yeah, the Girl Scout cookie thing proves that theory right then and there.
Like my wife buys them from one kid, I buy them from another. Like and you're like, oh shit, we got more cookies than we know what to do with.
And not just that, but I feel so bad that I'll buy them, but I just throw them right out because they're so bad for you anyways. So I literally spend the money to throw them in the trash because
take them to the homeless shelter.
I could do that, yeah. This time next year. Go ahead.
I know. I was going to say, I always like when kids come up to the door like that, I'll always, unless it's something insane, I will buy it. Mm-hmm. And the reason I will buy it is because to me, it's a way of me thinking I'm giving back, right? If the kid,
well, it takes you back to the time when you sold something for $20 and spent $10 on it, right?
Yeah.
You never know if that's going to be the moment that pushes them over the edge to, develop the next Facebook or do whatever, right?
Right. And that is part of the process, right? And so you're absolutely right, Landon. And it's like, this is what people don't realize a lot of times is they have a lot of skill sets that they can leverage that they just learn through life. And someone who's willing to come up and knock on doors and hear an occasional no, even if they're 8 years old, the thing that they don't do at 8 years old, they don't really take it that personally, right? They just don't even know any better. So it's not like they fling themselves.
Like, okay, thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Right. They're not throwing themselves on the front lawn and throwing a tantrum over it, right? But I see people and they're like, 30s, 40s, 50s, like they just like feel like somebody said no, and it's like, oh, my life's over, right?
Right. I've been there. I get
life's hard. Get a helmet.
Yeah.
I tell my daughter all the
time. So Doug, 38 different businesses throughout your life. And what I'm curious about is why. So, for example, do you get bored easily? Do you shut them down quickly if you don't see that they're doing well? Are you the type that likes to build and sell and get to the next one? Like, help me understand the philosophy behind starting so many things.
I'm a creator, quick start creator. My strength is I can create a tremendous amount of activity in a short period of time. That is also my kryptonite. because I can create a tremendous amount of activity in a short period of time, but I generally don't set up the right systems and processes to handle that type of growth. So as I got a little more seasoned in this process, um, I learned to put structure and process in. And then now in my life, I'll build them and I'll bring people in to actually either run them or co-venture together. Like my software right now, the Vivitno one, the automated proactive follow-up system with, we built the CRM and everything into it, but I'm actually talking to 3 or 4 people right now who have tech backgrounds, who have built businesses in the tech business already, showing them what I got, thinking it's complementary to what they have, and asking them, do they want to absorb this in and build it? And we can build it in partnership, right? Before, I would always take it on my back and try to do everything. And that was my big mistake, because I create way too much activity. But to answer your question on some of the other points, yeah, I've built them and shut them down, because when you keep banging your head against the wall, early on in my life, I would just keep banging and bang. Well, and that's what happened when I lost the few $100,000, right? Is now I've learned, and I learned this actually from Russ Whitney. So shout out to Russ. Russ actually used to build companies to $500,000. Then they'd have a meeting together as a group, and they would determine whether they kept them or shut them down. And the first time I heard that, I'm like, what? $500,000? Why? You go through all of that work to get it to $500,000 and then you shut it down? Like, what? In my brain, that's what was going on. And Russ has been instrumental in mentoring me on a lot of points. And one of the things, he said is it going to grow to 50 million, or is it going to grow to, where you want it to grow to? If not, shut it down and move on to something else. So I've embraced that philosophy on some of these things. Some of these things, quite frankly, other people, we did a clean out business one time. It's funny because 1-800-junk, if you will. So I know the founder, and I had the idea and was implementing the idea 3 years before he even started that idea. And my partner actually took it over and bought me out on part of that. And I said to him, I said, I had that exact idea. He's like, yeah, but you didn't carry through. I did, right?
Fair.
So there's a Brian Scudamore. He's a super nice guy. I've done it for all different facets, David. Sometimes, frankly, they milked out of the money and that was it, right? It just didn't, you set aside a certain amount of money, and if it's not working, sometimes you just determine, hey, or you know what, I don't want to be in this relationship anymore. Like this industry, I thought it was this, and turns out to be this plus that, and then I don't want that. So there's all kinds of different reasons.
Typical squirrel kid. On to the next one.
Yeah. In that case, as I got older, Landon, I started being more strategic about it and saying, okay, what do I like? Who do I want to be around? Can we get our first sale quicker than, X, right? I started putting parameters around these things. And then, so I might look at 10, 12 things and then say, okay, this one makes sense, but the other 11 don't. And I also used to be heavily invested in the outcome that was tied to my own ego, though. That's really where an entrepreneur gets in trouble. And so now I look at it and I say, I'm invested in getting it to this place for this reason, but I'm not directly tied into my ego, into the process like I used to be. Because one day I woke up and I was so scared. House was paid off, cars paid off, kids were healthy, everything was paid off. I had I think $500,000 in the bank at the time. I was pulling in at least $500,000.
Before the punchline, I have to first interject and say, "Ooh, so scary, Doug."
Thanks, David. Thanks. Because I literally said to my wife, because we lived in in Sugar Land, Texas at the time. And I literally said to my wife at the time, I said, something's wrong with me. Like, I've got everything that most people on an average lifestyle would be like, you're doing great. And I'm just not happy. I can't figure it out. I'm so scared. I said, you know what? I'm going to go down in the inner city of Houston, the sections, you know, you don't want to be down there, say at night alone. And I said, I'm going to walk around and I'm going to go up to people. I'm just going to tell them, listen, I got $500,000 in the bank. My kids are healthy. The house is paid off. I'm going to complain about everything I got. And I said, I want to see how long it takes people to beat me up.
This is wild. Are you that big of a badass? I mean, I gotta know.
Well, because I knew Landon, I knew David, I knew in my heart that I had a huge lack of gratitude for the obvious, right? And I couldn't figure out why I was so afraid. And then I literally started driving toward the center of Houston. and it started to kick into me. I was like, oh my gosh, I have my identity tied into all of this. And if I lose this, I lose my identity, which is complete nonsense. It's not true. But at the moment I made it true and it had it really, truthful in my own subjective mind. And this is going back to what we were talking about, the mind shift or the mindset, right? If I had stayed in that place, I would have continued to keep sabotaging that. I never would have grown beyond that. And some people say, well, why do you need to? Because that's not a bad place, right? But I wanted to grow more, but I was too afraid to do it at that time. So once I kind of snapped out of that process, things started breaking free again. But I was there for like a year, maybe 15 months.
How long did it take for you to get your ass kicked?
I didn't go. I did.
Sounds like you turned around.
I turned around. I didn't. I chickened out.
Say better to lose your identity than lose your life in downtown Houston.
I figured, I'd probably lose all my teeth, and that would have cost me about 80 grand to get all this place at the time. So yeah, it was one of those deals. It's amazing what we will do as human beings, how we will completely lie to ourselves to protect ourselves from the perceived threat that doesn't even exist. I was just talking to people over the past few weeks. I have a client who has a brain health, memory health company where they literally teach people how to stave off, push it off, halt, sometimes even reverse symptoms of getting near dementia, near Alzheimer's, things like that. And it's all lifestyle changes that, bring it on. And I was listening to the recordings and these people are like, yeah, you know what? I'm forgetting. What's your name, David? Is it Donald? No, and they would be in the middle of that conversation and they can't remember the name. And how long has this been going on? No, 2 years. It's been progressively getting worse. And it's like, well, okay, so we can do this but it's a small investment of X. And then, oh no, can't do that, right? And I'm like, they'll admit, oh, I know in 5 years I'll probably be sitting in a memory care unit. But that'll never happen to me, right? Because they're so used to telling themselves that story that it's never going to happen to them, even though it happened to their mother, even though it happened to their grandfather, even, you know what I mean? We as human beings have this tremendous capacity to lie to ourselves to the point where we believe the lies, even if we know they're not true. And when we get ourselves in a business and we keep doing that, good things can happen or bad things can happen. And most of the time, it's not the good thing.
Are you familiar with Dave Meltzer?
Yeah, I know Dave. Yeah, David. Yep.
So when I first got into consulting, I remember I hired him to coach me for a handful of months to like help get out of my rut. And I don't know what he charges now, but at that point he was charging like $250 for barely a 15-minute call. Yep. And the thing that stuck with me the most is he leans so heavily into the power of gratitude.
Yes.
As you referenced earlier, even going as far as to say, just every single night before you go to bed, just remember to just say thank you. And that process in and of itself has helped so much, just personally. It humbles you, and it's amazing how the more grateful you are, the more you accomplish, what be it a result of that or just because you're in a good place. But having intentional gratitude has been incredibly impactful.
Yes, I would only imagine it is. And when I practice the same, here's the thing: we can't be in a scarcity mode when we're in a gratitude mode,
Yep.
right? And so if we are out of scarcity and into an abundance mentality, then we start asking better questions, have better thoughts that are more empowering and more impactful to the outcomes which we're looking for in a positive way. If we don't have gratitude, we're in the negative side of that. So we're asking, like, why does this always happen to people like me? What, oh yeah, it's because I have no hair in my case, right? The world's against baldies, that's right. It's like, and we go to crazy, crazy places. And gratitude is a wonderful thing. Like if a person wakes up every morning and just takes 10 minutes, spends a couple minutes on gratitude, reads something positive that might be, helpful, eats or drinks something that's healthy for them, like in the first, it could be like a little green smoothie or green juice or whatever, and actually does a little bit of exercise, a few push-ups, a couple, sit-ups, and a few squats, let's say, right? And stretch a little bit. Their day will be way better just from that. And then as you were doing, David, at night, recapping the same thing. If you just did the same thing at night, before and after. And I knew these top producers in multi-level marketing, direct sales business, called Melaleuca. And they were the top people in there. Every morning they got together and they asked this one question: what do we got to do today to advance our business? And they came up with a couple of plans, a couple of ideas. All right, we're going to implement them. Then they get back together at the end of the night and they'd say, okay, what did we accomplish? What did we learn? Good or bad? And they would do that every single day. I don't know what they're making now, if they're even involved in it, but the one of the guys back now, this is in 1984. He was averaging $83,000 a month in checks. So
decent coin back then.
Yeah. $1 million, pull, right?
My mom is probably in a roundabout way in their downline. She still uses all Melaleuca products.
Oh, wonderful. The gentleman I'm referring to, if you want to ask your mom, is Eddie Bastozo.
Okay.
So there was different people, but they all kind of started together. It was Nona Pione, Eddie, Tommy Pisano, and Alan, can't remember Alan's last name, but they all started together. And, that's what Eddie told me they did every single day. And, it showed up great for them, right? I mean, they all made huge amounts of money back then. And so, again, I think it's one of those things that if we can just kind of focus our brain around that and it's the crazy part, guys, and I think you can agree or refute this, is it's not hard to do it, but for most people, it's hard because they just don't have the discipline to get up and do it every single day.
That's where I always get into it. Like my wife and I occasionally get into it because she's like, oh, everybody needs therapy and this and that. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not a big therapy guy. Like, been through some
I
shit,
started a podcast.
Yeah, right.
That's
I don't know.
funny.
It's tough for me. It's like, just if something's wrong, go fix it, and quit always thinking that your glass is half empty, right? Like, just go change your current trajectory. It's not that hard. Like we're not in a country where we're bound and shackled. Like you've got freedom to do whatever the hell you want.
Yeah. Yeah. And in this country, especially, I,
Like people want to bitch about their jobs, they want to bitch about their family
yeah,
life, like all it's like, well, what do you put into your family life? Okay, what you put into it is probably what you're getting out of it, right? What do you put into your job? Well, if you hate your job, you're probably not putting much into it. So go change it.
yeah. And travel to
Yeah.
get a contrast, right? Go to the
Go to
places where,
downtown Houston.
yeah, go
Yeah.
to, God, the mayor of Houston's going to come after me on this one. But um, but like, my wife originally was born in Poland, so I've had the privilege of traveling a lot in Europe, right? And there's certain places, like even in Poland, when I first started going over there, our dollar was 4.5 to their dollar. And
Well,
so, like great, you can get to go to the United States, and I'm staying in like 4 or 5 star hotels for $32 a night. Right. The same place. I mean, if you went to New York City versus Warsaw, which is their largest city, I mean, the same hotel would cost you $380 a night. And there I'm paying $32, right?
Hmm.
You could buy a home over there. And this is not that long ago. I mean, we've known each other for 11 years. So started going over there 8 years ago. 8 years ago, you could buy a nice home over there for 60, $70,000.
Jeez.
Right. So
might just
think about,
retire to Poland.
yeah, exactly. Well, the food is amazing. And over the people are wonderful. But not if you go to Czechoslovakia, well, no, the Czechia today, right? It's less costly than Poland. People go to Czechia. If back when the Ukraine was open, if Ukrainians used to come to Poland because they were making more money than they could in Ukraine. And and then they'd go back home and take the money, right? Back to there. Polish people used to go to, and they still do London, right? To work, and they would live there away from their families so that they could spend money back. People would go apple picking. Go to Africa where they're earning $125 a month and, don't have running water, and get a little contrast in her life, right? That was the whole idea about me going downtown Houston, because I knew, these people didn't have it the way I had it. But, you go to some of the end of, Landon, you were mentioning, I think, America, we have unlimited opportunity. Try that as a woman in maybe Iran, or you know what I mean, or Syria, or I don't really know. I'm not downing them. I just know what we hear, right? But I knew a gal who came from Iraq, and she was a doctor there, and she came to Europe, and they wouldn't recognize her license, but she couldn't go back to her family because she had shamed her family by moving out on her own. Right. And she was fearful that she was going to be deported because she was fearful of what was going to happen to her when she went back. So the reason I tell these stories is not to horrify people, but to say just what you said, Landon, get the heck over it. It's not that we have problems, ladies and gentlemen. We all have problems. It's how quickly do you recover? The old, what is that song? I get knocked down, but I get back up again, right?
Yep.
It's Chumbawamba or whatever the band was.
And it is Chumbawamba.
Chumbawamba. Okay, thanks. I was a DJ for a long time, so I remember some of these things.
I like it.
But how quickly we get back up again determines our level of confidence and going, over and over and over, building that habit. And then, knowing you can get back up quickly. And to your point, David, having gratitude for that,
And going back to you said something about when the Melaleuca folks were doing the morning and afternoon stuff. We talked about gratitude at the beginning and end of the day, and you said something to the effect of, it's easy, but it's not easy. One of the sayings that's always stuck with me that's similar to that is, hey, listen, this is simple. It's just not easy because you have to put in the work, but you have the process, right in front of you. We just talked about that process, but you need to you need what separates people from one another, at least in this context, is the the people who are making it, the people who are quote unquote successful, are the ones that show up even when they don't feel like it. And too often people don't show up because they don't feel like it that day.
Yeah,
And they lose all their momentum, if they had any, that they built leading up to that. And they self regulate themselves, similar to what Ed Milet says all the time about the thermostat. You got to crank that thing all the way up, otherwise you're going to self-regulate yourself back
of
down
course.
to what you're used to, and that happened for me the first 7 years of my career after college. Is I would always self-regulate and self-sabotage myself back down until I broke through that.
Yep, I did that for several years on my own as well. I would bring
Yeah,
my income up and then right back down and up and
yeah.
down. And, unless you get a pain point to push you through that, or a reason bigger, we'll tend to keep that label on us, right? And for me, it was the birth of my first daughter. I was like, oh no, I'm doing this now. It's real.
Hmm.
I've got this responsibility. But it's really helpful to get accountability partner or accountability partners in the process. And I think probably you and Landon do that for one another as well, based on
Hmm.
my interaction with you. But I remember in high school, Dwayne Podesky and Brian Jackson and I used to go to the gym at 4:30 in the morning and then go to school. And I hated it. I didn't like getting up in the morning ever. Right. And I still today, I don't like it. Even when it's the military, it's like, get up. I don't want to get up. It's 3:30 in the morning. Right. It's like, but what would happen is one of us inevitably were like, I don't want to really go tomorrow. Right. And then we would get up and go to their house and walk into their house, because back then you didn't lock your doors. And we would literally go and drag them out of bed.
Hmm.
And we would all get to the gym between 4:30 and 5, work out for like an hour and a half, take a shower, and then go to school. And we all need people who are going to drag us out of bed, at times, whether it's metaphorically or even physically, to get us to go to that thing. So surround ourselves with a nice network of people like that. And that's what Ed, Tom, Nona, Alan Pariser, that was his last name. From what I understand, that's what those four did every single day. They emotionally dragged each other out of bed, and they had to meet first thing in the morning, and then they set their goals, and they emotionally dragged themselves out at night.
Hmm.
And that's accountability practice builds habits. And but if you're alone, like you were talking about, David, it's very easy to get inside our own head and
Hmm.
then say, oh, you know what? One chocolate chip cookie more won't hurt us.
Hmm.
Well, guess what? If you eat one a day every day and add an extra 400 calories, it's gonna show up about 3 months down the line. You're gonna be like, oh, okay, wait, these pants don't fit like they used to, right?
That's what's
Um,
been going on. All this
yeah.
Cold Stone ice cream I've been consuming.
Oh yeah, Cold Stone. That's amazing ice cream too.
It's like
It,
crack.
yeah, and they fold all the other stuff into it, right? Don't they do that
Yeah.
with like on the yeah? So my youngest daughter Jacqueline used to love Cold Stone, so we would go there probably way too many times. That a parent should take their child to an ice cream place, but um, but yeah, that's exactly what happens, and we just don't real because we get a little bit of good over a long period of time. It shows that as a greatness. If we do a little bit of bad over a long period of time, it's a crap show at the end of it, right? And it shows up in the terms of, wow, that person's doing great. How long did it take them to be an overnight success? Or it shows up in a crisis.
Hmm.
And it's those little steps, little stages every single day that we do that 1%, 1%, 1%, one way or another, negative or positive, that turns into a compounding interest effect down the line.
Spot on. Well, Doug, this has been great. Before we wrap up, though, one question that we ask all of our guests is a book that's had an impact on them. What book comes to mind, and what's the impact that it's had on you?
Inner Voice is the name of the book. It's by Mr. Russ Whitney, the gentleman I was referring to before. Uh, it It's an awesome book. It's written from a business context, a little, I would say, not religious, but it kind of borderlines on the spiritual a little as well.
Mm-hmm.
But Russ was a gentleman who had, $1 billion plus of companies, lost 80% of his net worth and most of his family overnight. And he was publicly ousted out of his company. And so, imagine going through that. It's like, and so he went on kind of a quest, to find out what's the point of all this. Like, you got hundreds of millions of dollars in the bank, and and you've helped, literally thousands and thousands and tens of thousands, literally for him, millions of people. And so he kind of went on the quest to figure out, what was right, what was wrong. And that book is written from a very practical standpoint, which literally takes, if I had that book, I don't think it would have taken me 15 months to sit in that place before I was going to go down to the center of Houston. I think it would have taken a month.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's had a profound impact on my life about not being so reactive and understanding the directions to go that I truly want to go. What is the purpose of each day? To be happy, right? What does that mean? To have more happy moments than sad moments, that type of thing.
Love it. I pride myself on having read most of the books that our guests bring up, but I have not read that, so it'll be here Saturday. Thank you for the recommendation.
You're welcome. I think you'll like it.
Well, for those that are tuning in, Doug, if they want to connect with you, if they have a company that has a big sales arm or a smaller sales arm, but they're looking to aggressively grow, where can they connect with you? Where can they find you?
Doug at CEO Sales Strategies, plural.com is the email address. Here's my cell phone number, 832-549-4836. If they want to check me out on Doug Brown 123 is my LinkedIn. If they want to know a little bit more about me, just type in Doug C. Brown revenue growth, and you'll find things. I have a podcast as well called the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast. Any of those places, they can start to look more. And if they want to contact me directly, just reach out.
Awesome. Well,
love it,
Doug. We appreciate your time, man. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, David, Landon, I really appreciate both of you, and very grateful that you allowed me to be on your show.
Of course.
This is great. Appreciate you spending the time.
You're
and
welcome.
for everyone tuning in, we appreciate your time and attention as well. And we will catch you on the next episode.
Whoa. Who knew I would make it this far? They hated, they never believe me. Yeah, I would never drop the ball. I know I make it look easy. Yeah. Mayweather with the defense. I don't care what a critic got to say. I got them picking up the pieces. That to me, you really playing with your life. I'm about to come